she read this Hopi poem, and it's a beautiful poem. And at the end of the poem, the very last line is, "We are the ones we've been waiting for." And it still gives me chills when I say that line. Yeah, when she said that line, that is when I had like the biggest like aha moment. I was like, oh, I'm the one. I'm the one I've been waiting for. I am asking everybody for their advice and their opinions and their thoughts and their suggestions. And they all are good, but they don't always land right with me, or, I disagree, or I don't know. And it's because, they're giving me from their perspective. It just really landed like, oh, I need to really tune into myself. I am the one I've been waiting for. And so I bring that into like my work. You are the one you've been waiting for. Like, yes, we all need partners and help and support. But at the end of the day, I don't have the answers. You have the answers. You already know. And sometimes we need to do a little clearing to get, dust off the dust to get there. But we all have it. And I see that for myself too when I look back. Like, I had those answers. I knew.
That's Amy Schuber, and I'm Brian Falchuk.
The Do A Day podcast. Will you hear from the most inspiring people who have been through hard times, overcome them, and have turned around to help others with what they've learned? I'm your host, Brian Falchuk. I know because I've lived it myself. I've written about it in my book, Do A Day, and that's why I'm bringing you this show. Remember, today's a new day. Go out and do it.
Hey, day doers. Welcome to another episode of the Do A Day podcast. My guest today is Amy Schuber. Amy's a life and business coach. She's been working with, in particular, women leaders, entrepreneurs, and individuals for the past decade. She loves guiding women back to themselves with her strategic mind, savvy spirituality, and resources that she curates with straight up smarts. She has an innate ability to see a client's true potential and strategies needed to unlock the possibilities within them. Amy's also the host of a fantastic podcast called Inspired Conversations. Full disclosure, she had me on it. Inspired Conversations brings insights from today's thought leaders and just experts across a variety of different areas that are all about a better you. She brings those insights to help us all live into our life, and not just life, but business side and relationships and really everything about our lives in the most conscious, mindful way. Amy truly believes in this beautiful quote that she talks about in the episode today. You are the one you've been waiting for. I love that. All right, let's get right into it because there's some great stuff here. You got to hear about her journey, the choices she had to make, the way that she grew as a human being to be able to be the coach and the show host that she is today.
Amy Schuber, thanks for coming on tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I always say tonight, and then I'm like, well, I don't know when someone's going to listen to this or when it's going to air, what time of the day, but I won't worry about it. I'm psyched to have you on. You and I were connected through Aaron Hawkins, and we have all these other people in common that we're connected to. We were just talking about that before recording. So this was just like, it was meant to happen, but you also had me on your show, and I'm super thankful for that and had a great time sharing with you. So thank you for coming back and returning the favor and being a guest on my show.
Absolutely. I am excited to be here. And we had such a good conversation when we were talking for you on my show. So I love the exchange. So thank you.
Cool. I'm very impressed by your work as a coach and what you're trying to do for other people. And of course, this show's not as simple as that. There's lots of great coaches out there who go on as guests or have shows, and it's just like, here's the message you need to learn to move ahead. I kind of like to rewind before that and get into what brought people to that point in the first place. And you totally have one of those stories. Like, you took a big leap, you put yourself out there, and you created that path yourself in I will say, a pretty bold, courageous kind of way. And I'd love for you to just like take us through that. What is that journey that you went on to get to this place of recognition and success that you're in right now?
It's interesting. It's so interesting to look back because it's so much clearer for me now when I look back and see how
it always is, right?
Yeah, of course, hindsight. But, when you start articulating it and sharing it, it's like, wow, this has really brought me to now. And at the time, I wouldn't have maybe trusted it or known it because it seems so crazy and almost like painful at the time. But I was one of those people that I grew up and I followed all the rules. I did what I was supposed to do. I was like a good kid and graduated from high school, went to college, graduated from college, got a job like I was supposed to do. And I grew up in Southern California and I went away to school. And then from school, I moved to San Francisco with some friends. I got a job and transferred with a job up there because I got a job in Southern California first. And then I transferred with that job and moved into the city. And, I felt like I was checking all the boxes, doing what I was supposed to be doing. And it was great. I spent my 20s in San Francisco with some amazing friends and created some amazing opportunities and life stories and life experiences. But then when you get into the grind of it and work and changing jobs and moving up the ladder, I was just finding myself super unfulfilled. And there was a time when I worked in these amazing companies, but it was also a strange time because like there were hiring freezes, so you couldn't move up, and it was like the dot-com boom in the city at the time, and so everyone was leaving like the big companies for startups, and that was the big thing. So of course I did the same thing, and then lost my job, which I'm so glad I have that story because I have a story of going to like working at a startup and walking in one day and they were like, yeah, we don't have payroll. We don't have money. We're closing. And we were all just dumbfounded, like, what?
Wow.
And so then like leaving there and just being like, okay, now what? And that led me to a job and it was interesting. That was a moment where I thought, oh, okay, good. I'm going to find what I really want to do now that I just got kicked out on the street of this job. But I didn't have that luxury because at that time, jobs were really scarce. Things were kind of blowing up in the city in the sense of like everyone was sort of getting laid off and things. So I started contract work, which was a really great gig, but they only wanted me to do it for so long. And then they wanted me to come on full time. And it was one of those things where I knew it wasn't the job for me, but I knew I didn't have many choices because as I was contracting, I was looking for other work to like fill the job that I really wanted to do. And I couldn't find it. And so they gave me an ultimatum. And so, of course, I took the job because I didn't want to walk away from something that was supporting, my lifestyle and everything. But I kind of knew it was going to not be the job for me. And the reason I say this is because this is the job that I ended up quitting and just making a real huge shift because as I was growing with that job, I just was becoming more and more unfulfilled, more and more burned out, more and more unhappy. And it was one of those moments that I was being passed over for promotions. The work I was doing wasn't being recognized and other people were getting the promotions. And I was like, this is baffling to me. Why am I working so hard? And just, I was just unfulfilled and just like, what's it all for? And I started having that self-exploration at the time. And I started, wondering, and I was miserable. I really did have the Sunday blues. When you go on Sunday, you just don't want the day to be over because you have to wake up and go to work on Monday. And I just was like sick of my life and hating it. And I was like, there's got to be more to this. And so I just started exploring. I got a coach. I went to a career class. And that was really the pivotal moment. So I joined this career class, and I don't know what else to call it. It really was a career class. We did some, some of those scores to get our scores, to find out what we were really supposed to be doing. And I was just like at my wit's end. And in that class, I started it. And the first night, the woman said, a lot of you are going to have a lot of change in the next 6 weeks. And we all sort of thought, okay, whatever. And jumped to the last session of that class. I actually quit my job on the 6th session of that class.
Wow.
And I realize now what happened in that class, but it was because I was ready and looking and wanting change and really trying to figure out what I needed to do and what it was that I could do to create a shift for myself. But I realized it was up to me. And so a lot of things kind of converged in those 6 weeks, but it just joining that class opened my world up to opportunities. And then I had to make some decisions and take some risks, but I was presented with some opportunities, just like, do it. Why not? And so I did. And so me doing that and quitting my job, and I quit my job without knowing what was on the other side. So I had decided to move back to Southern California. And when during that 6 weeks, I had come home to, I think, my niece's birthday party, and I was sort of falling apart, losing it, like crying to my family, like, I don't know what to do. I'm so miserable and I'm unhappy and I hate my job. And, what am I going to do from here? And where am I going to go from here? Because it just seems like dead end. And my dad just looked at me and was like, what's the big deal? Just quit your job. Big deal. And he made it seem so simple and easy. I know. And I was like, what? Here I am doing everything I'm supposed to do, like finish school, get a job, like do all these things, climb the ladder. And he just like gave me this permission that I didn't know I maybe needed. And I didn't realize I was making such a big deal of something. So, because I felt like a real failure for quitting my job and not knowing where I was going from there. Because for me, I thought, or I was brought up knowing there was always a plan and something in front of it. And I guess I hadn't been taking many risks, like going and moving to San Francisco seemed like a risk, but then it was kind of easy and no big deal. I was doing it with friends, but that opportunity to just sort of take a minute, take a beat and, reassess what I wanted to do. So my intention was to quit and find my passion, like, discover what I was really wanting to put out in the world and find my purpose. Even though that wasn't the language I was using at the time, I was just really wanting to do what I loved, and I'm a creative person and I was kind of like, well, how do I transfer throwing great parties into a job, like event planning maybe. And so I was sort of in that space of really wanting to explore the next steps of my career and what's possible. So I did quit and move back to Southern California. And I took some time and I explored and I went to the Interior Design Institute and explored, that creative side of me. And then I did what every good girl does, is go get a job again. Because I was I succumbed to the pressure of people asking me what I was doing and kind of like, who do you think you are? But I had savings. And so I kind of was like, I'm okay. And I got a job. But thankfully I got chewed up and spit out of that job. And it was 8 months later, I got laid off. And so then was when I was like, okay, now I'm really going to do what I intended on doing and explore. And then that has led me to the work I'm doing now, which is coaching, podcasting. And, I went to an entrepreneur class in Southern California. So I live in Orange County and the class was in Los Angeles. And I just decided to go. It was 4 weeks and I went with an idea for a business, which is not anything I'm doing now. I made some friends and the woman who was leading the course said, do you want to run this in Orange County? And I looked at her and I said, yeah.
Wow.
But I had no idea what that meant. No idea. But what I realize now when I look back, it was that opening to the coaching, facilitating, interviewing people, speaking, because I ran the group. It was 4-week workshops. I ran the membership group, which had monthly meetings where I had speakers that I interviewed. And so it just gave me this platform. And that's where I landed and was like, oh, this is what I love. This is what I love to do. Yeah. And before that, I had no idea that's where I would be because I had a coach. But when I was in my coaching relationship, I never looked at her and thought, oh, I want to do what you do. Not once did I look at her.
That's so interesting because you hear that from a lot of coaches that were like, I had a coach and I was just like, that's what I want to be doing. I mean, I actually, that was what I felt. I was like, how do I make myself what he is? Can I stop and rewind? Like, there's so many points where I was just like, I want to jump in, but I don't want to stop the flow.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, there's a lot of meat in that, and so I want to step back quite a ways. Early on, you had made reference to like all the pain that you had at the time that you went through, in these jobs, this job that you didn't like when you're talking about early on and this whole process. And I'm so curious with this notion of these painful processes, if we have to go through them. So, a lot of people shy away from it. A lot of people say lean into the pain. Do you think that having that difficulty was a crucial piece of the puzzle for you?
For me, it was because it pushed me out. It pushed me to make choices and do some things differently and take some risks. I think if I was maybe happier in some of those jobs, or that maybe that last job, I wouldn't have taken the risk and felt pushed out. But definitely was pushed by pain. It's like you're pulled by that vision or you're pushed by pain. I was definitely pushed by pain. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if that's my personality. I mean, it's not everywhere in my life that that's the case, but in that case, I really felt like I was suffering in those jobs. I mean, I can
Sure.
almost feel it, like feeling the miserable sense of going to work. Like I haven't had that feeling in so long, but I really kind of suffered because I felt like I just had to. It's like, oh yeah, I got to pay my rent. I'm responsible. I have to stay here. And at the same time, I was looking for other jobs, but nothing was landing with me and nothing was working. And there wasn't a ton of opportunity to kind of make a big shift, where it was like take what zero experience into something new. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I want to become an event planner now, but I have zero experience in that. So it was hard to translate that. And so I think for me, it was perfect because I needed to like rip the band-aid, take the risk, and kind of tell the universe that I was serious about making a change and I needed it. And I needed it to show up for me. I say that now in this language, but at the time I didn't realize that's what was going on.
Yeah. Well, so I appreciate that. And I think pain's not such a bad thing, as
No.
much as it hurts, like,
Yeah.
and we don't tend to see that at the time. But what's interesting is there's some of us who are in pain, but are sort of numb to it. And it's that
Mhm.
mindlessness. And so I think it's great that you were aware of it, because if you don't know about it, then you can't act.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's it's a good thing in that kind of twisted, sadistic way, but it is.
Yeah.
But then I'm curious, when you had that sick kind of feeling about that job where they gave you an ultimatum, and like ultimatums are never a good sign. That's usually
Mm-mm.
like pretty big flag waving around. Hey, this is not a place you want to be.
Yeah.
But you said when you went back down to Southern California and you went into that, like I'm being a good young adult and getting a job, like you still knew. Was it a similar kind of feeling? Did you have this, like, I have this gut feeling telling me this is wrong, but I'm just not going to listen to it? Was it the same sort of feeling, or was this just different? You just didn't, maybe not as strong, but just not great?
It wasn't a great feeling. It was definitely different. It was more, I think, of pressure it was almost like societal pressure, like, what are you doing? Get a job. So, I was exploring and I felt okay doing that, but I was feeling that pressure. And honestly, my coach at the time said the same thing to me. She's like, you need to get a job. And that was our last coaching session together because I felt completely unsupported by her. And I wasn't sure where that was coming from because I wasn't in a stressful situation, like financially. So, and it really kind of cut me off at the knees because I thought, oh, finally I've, you know, given myself some grace and some, like independence to give the freedom to look for what I really want to do in love and take the time. And the pressure of people saying that to me, family, and then my coach, I was just like, oh, okay, I guess that's what I'll do. So, I went on some great interviews. I had some great opportunities. But so I took a job, like that was the thing that I was supposed to do, supposed to in quotes. And it was the worst. I mean, I got like a director level position, so it was a step up, and the team that worked for me was terrible to me, and I'm a pretty nice, easygoing person. My boss was really weird and strange, and I was just having this really strange experience with these people. And so about a month into it, I knew like, oh no, this was wrong. And it was not the same kind of miserable because I felt like I was empowered. But I also knew it wasn't going to last long. Just I thought, okay, if I'm going to give this a little bit of time and then I'm going to like go do something else. But in that time, and within like 6 months, I kind of knew the company was falling apart. And then within 8 months, I lost my job. So I sort of just at 6 months, I knew that, oh, there's this opportunity. I might be laid off and I'll just write it out. And so I did. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, it was a different kind of pressure I succumbed to. And then in it, I didn't feel so like miserable because I knew I was empowered in it because I could leave if I wanted to. And if I quit that job, by my choice, like my world wouldn't fall apart.
Right, right.
So yeah, I learned that from quitting my job with not knowing what was on the other side. Like, oh, I'm gonna be okay. Like this isn't my end all, and it'll be okay if I make this choice for myself.
Right. That definitely teaches a good lesson if you choose to latch onto it.
Yeah.
And of course, if things didn't work out okay, and you paid a big price, like lost your home or whatever, couldn't pay your bills or whatever you were facing and didn't have a safety net or anything,
Yeah.
then maybe you wouldn't feel that way about it. But you saw like, this quote unquote terrible thing, actually, like, I'm still okay. Somehow I'm still alive. The sky didn't fall and the world's still spinning.
Exactly.
One of the things I'm really curious about is through these experiences, through this time where you were unhappy in this job and you clearly wanted out, or these jobs, plural, how much did you feel this sort of tug or this, I don't know, like this pull that you have a gut feeling that's telling you one thing, and yet you have this sense of obligation or the role of, the good daughter or the good employee or whatever, you need to stick it out. Like, how much were you mistrusting how you felt about it or ignoring it and just trudging through anyway?
I mean, leading up to that, I was trudging through anyways. Like I was ignoring all of my instincts for sure. Because like maybe a year before I decided to quit my job, I had an opportunity to move to Southern California and I didn't take it. And one of my friends had said to me, like, if you don't take that, you'll just be the first to go. But if you don't take it, you'll probably be the last to go. Meaning at that time, my friends were starting to get married and move out of the city or get different jobs. And so lots of things were changing. And lo and behold, I didn't take it. And I guess I wasn't ready to be the first to go, but I was the last to go. Like I was one of the last friends standing in the city. And that was one of the reasons that contributed to sort of me being unhappy and missing my tribe of friends and community. Because they had moved and it just had changed. So it was interesting because I ignored my intuition and my instincts for a bit. And as I ignored them, the pain points got bigger and more pressure. And looking back, I can see that now, and I sort of pushed myself to the pain points that, maximum pain, I guess. So yeah, I don't know if I did struggle with it. But I think I just ignored and didn't trust myself as much as I wish I would have. I wish I would have really tuned into myself. But at the time, I was also exploring outside of myself. I wasn't really going inwards to find my answers. I was asking everybody to help me and support me and what should I do kind of thing. And now I realize if I would have done a little bit more intuitive work at the time or just reflection, I would have really known what I was looking for and where I was headed, if I would have just like tuned in and listened to myself.
Yeah, so you're a good guest. That's where I wanted to take it.
Oh,
no, but like I find that that's such a key issue is how much we don't trust ourselves and we look for someone else to give us the answer, whether it's because we don't believe in our expertise or for some people it's because maybe they're looking for someone to lay blame on if it doesn't work out. It's not that I took this bad job. It's that, my parents told me I should take it. It's like, why did they do that? Or, the doctor said, do this and now I'm sick or, whatever it is, like we don't trust our own judgment, our own decision-making. And we're always looking for someone else to give us the answer. And I'm really curious. I'm sort of fast forwarding all the next part of the story, but do you find in your coaching work that some of these pieces from your backstory are consistent themes in what you work with people on today?
They are. I think we all sort of have that insecurity when we want to make a change or that self-doubt. And it always goes back to listen to yourself and allow yourself to be quiet enough to listen to yourself and even ask that question, like you were saying, like, were you pushed by pain or are you pulled by your vision and what's factoring more heavily there, know? And sometimes we are pushed by pain until we can be inspired and find that vision for ourselves, because sometimes when we're in it, we're not inspired at all. Like I was like, what what am I going to do? Like, I'm not inspired to, go sing for a living, or, you know what I mean? That wasn't really present for me at the time. I needed to do some of that exploration. But when I allowed myself to go there, the opportunities came towards me. When I said yes to things, then I saw, oh, I'll go down that path. And then it came and met me,
Mm.
and I started realizing and finding the answers. And I was mentioning before we started in the official conversation here, but one of the things after I had gone into entrepreneur group, I attended the women's conference, and it was when Maria Shriver was in charge of it
Wow.
in California. So it became this really amazing conference for women. And it was the governor's conference. It had been the governor's conference for women. And at that event, I went with some new friends, and she read this Hopi poem. And it's a beautiful poem. And at the end of the poem, the very last line is, "We are the ones we've been waiting for." And it still gives me chills when I say that line, because
I love that.
when she said that line, that is when I had like the biggest like aha moment. I was like, oh, I'm the one. I'm the one I've been waiting for. I am asking everybody for their advice and their opinions and their thoughts and their suggestions. And they all are good, but they don't always land right with me, or, I disagree, or I don't know. And it's because, they're giving me from their perspective. And when she read that line, and it was a poem that was on our program, so we got to take it home with us, it just really landed like, oh, I need to really tune into myself. I am the one I've been waiting for. And so I bring that into like my work. You are the one you've been waiting for. Like, yes, we all need partners and help and support. But at the end of the day, I don't have the answers. You have the answers. You already know. And sometimes we need to do a little clearing to get, dust off the dust to get there. But we all have it. And I see that for myself too when I look back. Like, I had those answers. I knew enough to at least go to a class to help me discover it, or hire a coach to help me explore. And then I think I gave too much of my power away to some of those people or the circumstances.
Mm.
And it's bringing it back to ourselves and really trusting ourselves when we do have the answer, and then going for it and taking that risk. That's a whole nother thing, the change, the risk, whatever that is for us in the moment of what it is we're creating, or doing or changing. So yeah, but yeah, I feel really strongly about that. And then what's funny is that line has followed me in my world. So I'll be somewhere and someone will say it to me, and I'm like, what did you just say? Or I one time was at a spiritual center, and it was this amazing gratitude event, and we all wrote letters to each other, and there was like 1,200 people in the room, passed our letters to the middle, sorted them around, they got shuffled all around the room. The letter I got back, the very last line said, "You are the one you've been waiting for." And I thought, out of all these people,
That's so
why would I
wild.
get that letter that says that?
Yeah.
So, I constantly am reminded that, oh yeah, I have all the answers, and not all the answers for everybody else, but all the answers for me.
Right. I think that's really crucial is you're not
Yeah,
saying that about you for the world. You're saying that about you for you. And it's whoever you may be. For
exactly.
each of you out there. And
Yeah.
that's the point of empowerment that I love so much about that phrase. And I think we all forget a little bit, or maybe we don't forget, but we block it. That couldn't
Yeah.
be. How could I
Yeah.
possibly be good enough to help myself?
Yeah, exactly. And I had a moment with a friend when I was starting a different business, the one I put into that group. It was like a baby blanket business. And we were talking about names for it. And I had this thought. I was asking her for her opinion about the name. And I already decided on the name. So I don't know why it came out as a question. And then her husband walked in the room, and he gave me his opinion because I was asking a question, and he gave it to me, and he walked out. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't need to ask the question this way anymore. I already know what I know, and I know what I'm going to do. So I need to change it from a question to a statement, because when you ask the question in that way, you get feedback and you get opinions, and I was getting it, and I was like, "Wait, I don't want that because I already know."
Yeah.
But it was the way I was showing up, right? And so then from that moment on, I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to tell people this is what I'm doing versus ask people what you think about what I'm doing." And for me, that was a moment of clarity, because sometimes as a seeker or we're, when we're looking for the answers, we do ask a lot of questions, but sometimes we don't need to. We already know. And if you show up with a statement, people will confirm it for you, or they'll give you a response or a reaction, and you can go from there. But you're showing up with the information already like kind of solidified, and that feels better, and it feels like it's more grounded in who we are. And I think that helps in trusting yourself as well. And I noticed for me, when I showed up in questions, I wasn't trusting myself, but I already knew that I didn't really want the person's feedback, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's really, really interesting. You were sort of like in this dilemma point where you didn't have the confidence to stand tall as yourself.
Yeah.
But yet you had the desire to do it.
Exactly.
Oh. All right. So you go to this seminar in Orange County. Wait, you're from Orange County and it's in LA, or other way around?
Yeah, I'm from Orange County. It was in LA.
So you go to the seminar in LA. The woman's like, why don't you do this in Orange County, or do you want to do this? And she asked it as a question. She wasn't making a statement yet, right?
Right.
So that opens the door to this new chapter.
It did. Because I said yes in the moment. I said yes. And what does that mean? And so we started laughing, and she's like, okay, we're going to connect and meet about this. And it was a business opportunity, really. And then it opened the door for me to facilitate this women's group. So ultimately, I was coaching 10 women at a time for 4 weeks in this program. And I got to witness everybody showing up and being vulnerable. And it was showing up with a business idea or a business already in play, or wanting to take it to the next level, like different variations of your business. And so I got to support these women through that. And so for me, I was just becoming an entrepreneur, and I learned so much about, the process. And I was also facilitating the process at the same time. The other funny thing about my story is I come from a family of entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was wanting to quit my corporate job, I think that's why it was so easy for my dad to say, like, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
And I just had this like, what is wrong with me, in the sense of, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Of course, I'm uncomfortable in that corporate setting, because I was uncomfortable in it. Like I worked in a cubicle or an office, and I felt like I was in a box, like physically I was, and energetically I was. And so it was interesting that it never dawned on me before that moment to be an entrepreneur or to start my own business, when I come from a family of that. So, and I come from a family of creatives, like crazy, beyond extraordinary creatives.
Mm.
And it wasn't like I was trying to be different from them. It was just that I think the seeds were planted in me that it's easier to go get a job. It's easier to not do your own thing, because I witnessed my family struggles through the year as an entrepreneur, and having to do it all and cover it all and create everything yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that was subconscious or what. But, yeah, so it was sort of like I got this permission to be an entrepreneur and start my own business. So it was sort of funny. I came full circle without even realizing I was not in the circle.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and how did you feel in those first 4 sessions, 10 women, right?
Yeah.
How did that feel? Because that was totally new. You'd never done anything like that before. Were you like, this is my calling?
I was excited by it, and I felt it was my calling because I was good at it. I was naturally good at it, and I didn't know I was going to be good at it. So I was nervous about stepping in. And, the woman I was doing it with, she partnered with me at first. She would show up, but then, she set me free after like being there maybe like the first or the second group. She set me free, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's setting me free. What am I going to say? What am I going to do? And that is when I learned just to trust myself and be in the moment. And I know that I'll have whatever the people need at the time. And if not, I can figure it out, right? And I was nervous, but there was something that was familiar and really comfortable in it for me. And I was getting feedback, like people were really enjoying it, or that they appreciated what I had said. And, every session I showed up, and I didn't have a script. I mean, there was a format to it, but there was not a script for it. And so it was so interesting when I trusted myself and said something about whatever topic at the time, that someone at the end would always say, I can't believe you said that because it's exactly what I've gone through or exactly what happened to me. And it was always something different. So I started learning to trust in whatever wanted to come through me because there was something there for people. And that was really interesting. So, it sort of trained me to trust myself and to just be open to the experience and hold space for people. And that's something I do anyways with friends and family and people. That's just like my nature. And it's so interesting because it's exactly what I wanted to do, finding a career that came natural to me and was easy for me, instead of like bumping up and doing things the hard way. And that's exactly what I fell into, was something that came natural to me. So yeah, at first it was a little nerve-wracking, but I got into the rhythm of it really quickly because I really enjoyed it.
That's awesome. I think the reasons why you liked it are the things people should latch on to. And the reasons why you didn't like the prior work is, in so much of my career coaching work that I do with people, this is exactly what they're battling. Is, it's a question of how much they're in touch with how unhappy they are, but they know something's not right and this isn't what they're meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of them, like you, they don't necessarily know what the dream job actually looks like.
Mm-hmm.
They just know it's not where they're at now. And that can be a pretty scaring and involved process of going through the self-discovery enough to figure out what you want to do, if that's even going to get you there, because you may not even realize what the options are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I definitely I see people struggle with the current job situation, how awake they are to the pain and understanding what it is specifically that's not fitting for them, because that can help you understand where you should head. But then taking that leap, and I mean, you did that multiple times. Good for you. And it's great that you had, your father's support. I think that's like the least likely place most people would get that kind of support. And certainly for me, it's like, what do you have to work. What are you doing?
Yeah. 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 And I've had that too, like the get a job line came from my dad when I think turned 16, get a job.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. Let me go figure that out. Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. And I think, we do struggle with it. And just because we're good at something doesn't mean we have to do it.
Yeah.
Like I was good at all the jobs that I was working in. That's why I had gotten them and stayed with them and maybe got some promotions just to tease me along the way. But I learned, just because I'm good at it doesn't mean I have to stick to it. There's so many things we're all good at and that we can excel at. And if we allow ourselves that chance to do that exploration, like you don't have to quit your job like I did, because I know I was pretty dramatic about it. But I will say, when we start moving in the direction of our purpose or our why or our bigger impact that we want to do and create in the world, it comes towards us, and situations will realign to allow us to have that, like people getting laid off and losing jobs, or it's just like the wildest things happen. And I witnessed that. So it was funny. I took that 6-week course and the woman said, people are going to quit their jobs and funny things are going to happen. And then I quit my job, 6-week mark. Another woman walked in and quit her job that same day. There's a guy in the class that was freaking out. He's like, I can't believe you guys quit your jobs. But it just sort of unfolded that way. And then here I go to facilitate this women's entrepreneur group. And women were in all kinds of different situations. Some had jobs part-time, some were full-time in their own business. But I would witness people also quitting their jobs or getting laid off or like just all these things. And I started realizing it's this opening that happens for you, and you can take it or not, and you can make it mean what you want it to mean or not. But when you start actively moving and pursuing, your life in a new way or your career in a new way, things start shifting and moving. So it happens for you. And sometimes it is a little painful when it happens. And in the midst of that pain, you're like, this isn't how I thought this would work out for me. But on the other side of it is where you're like, oh, now I get it. So for me, that's kind of what happened when I quit, moved back down here. Then I got another job. Then I went to this class, and then this opportunity opened up, so it was just like, oh, okay, now I get it. The puzzle pieces are starting to fit, because sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense when it's happening.
Do you think that there's something not quite prescriptive, but you went through quite a process a lot of it was sort of like through the experience you learn things. Is there a way to pull it out? So, I can think of people you might be coaching or just people listening who are going through it. Like, is there a way for them to figure out how to bring this into their life if they're maybe not going through what you went through and having that, it's a long journey to get there.
Yeah.
So what are the takeaways that people can say, like, okay, I know this isn't working. How do I figure out where to go?
Yeah. I would say first thing is like the awareness of the situation. Are you unhappy? What's missing for you? Sometimes it's in your work. Sometimes it's in your relationship. Sometimes it's in your relationship with yourself, like your health and well-being. So notice what feels like you're being pushed in, what area is feeling uncomfortable, and awaken to that. Like you said, like the first step is awakening and awareness. And if you're feeling sort of something's off, start that exploration. Like, could it be, the job you're in? Could it be the business that you're in? Could it be, if you're in your own business, like something that you're maybe trying to do too much in it? Just start exploring and allow yourself to get to the answer. You don't necessarily have to figure out the answer, but allow that answer to come to you. So being mindful of how you're reacting or responding in situations, whether something feels good or doesn't feel good, I think when that can really measure and give us a temperature of where we are, just really noticing how we're feeling in situations. For me, I felt really miserable on a Sunday night knowing I had to go to work on Monday. Like, it was really clear.
That's such a telltale, yeah.
Yeah, like you might feel really uncomfortable walking into maybe a class you're teaching, or you might feel really, just have a discomfort walking to talk to a friend. You know what I mean? Like, we all know when we're like, we have that feeling. And it's like, not to be touchy-feely, but it's like, feel those feelings. Let those feelings be there and notice where they are and where they're landing in your life. And those are the areas to give attention. So that awareness there. And then once because it's probably not all areas of our lives, right? It's sometimes it crashes down in all areas really to get our attention, but most likely it's not that. And so just notice and then pick the one that maybe feels like the one you want to really pursue because it has the biggest weight on you, So I think that's a really, really great place to start.
It is important to note you listed a bunch of things that are not job, they're not career. And that's, I definitely find myself talking to people about this idea that, like, we're not compartmentalized, and things that are around values and preferences and passion or what actually interests us, that's not just about your career or a relationship or your life is a holistic thing.
Yeah.
So one aspect does spill into the others, but when you do that self-exploration, that discovery of what you actually care about, you may find changes beyond just the one thing that may have started you on that path of self-discovery.
Yeah. Yeah. And we discover our passions in that. Like, sometimes we're unhappy at work because we're not happy in a relationship.
Right.
And we might be when you have that balance in your like home life and your relationships and your business or your job, you see all areas excel. I think we've all experienced that when one area is good, it sort of gives momentum in other areas.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's about kind of looking in all areas.
Yeah. No, that's really great. So would you say that, through this whole process, all areas have moved for you, or are there places that went on a different path, or you still struggled with, even though this one major area was moving in the right direction or a better direction?
It's funny. I'm like everyone else. I have issues in certain areas and other areas, but the thing that I think I've learned about myself is having the courage to look at the areas and do something about it sooner rather than later. So, like more recently in relationships and being in maybe the wrong relationship and walking away, and having the courage to be like, this isn't serving me. And you know what? When that relationship was sort of bringing me down and it was taking all my energy and it just was like really sucking the life out of me, even though I love my work, it was really hard for me to show up in my work, and then really hard for me to show up in interviews, right? So having a podcast, and it's scheduled interviews. But what's really also brilliant about maybe doing the work that you love is that it supports you. So, if I was having a really interesting or bad day or looking into my schedule for tomorrow, I would see, oh, I've got these interviews. But when I showed up in them, they supported me.
Yeah.
Because, for me, I'm like kind of like you, having these inspired conversations that give you these tips and tricks and tools and people's stories to help lift you up and find something that can maybe elevate you. And so for me, they always elevated me. And I was like, wow, how did that happen? How did I know that I needed that scheduled on this particular day? I didn't know this was going to happen this week. So, it's interesting how life will support you, career will support you when you really step into it and allow it. So I think, have all areas of my life been rosy? No, not necessarily. I've got my stride with my business and my coaching and feeling the confidence around who I am and what I do and how I do it with my clients. Same with my podcast. And then also now, leaving behind some bad relationships. And okay, now there's this area to, notice that's not been great and what I want to bring to it too. So I think it's always about evaluating what's worked and not worked, and then taking that and using that information so you don't make the same mistakes twice,
Yeah.
Or three times or four times.
It's irrelevant.
Or
yeah.
100 times.
And that's called being human. Like, that's completely fine. It's your choice to not beat yourself up for it. Just learn from it and move forward. And nobody's perfect. It really doesn't matter how we see them on the outside or what someone else's perception of us is. Like, we all have struggles. We all have ups and downs.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing about that. Other than listening to Inspired Conversations, which of course I will link to, and it's like, I was going to say it's inspiring, and that's kind of like defining word with a word, but it is. It's great. Yeah. Like, it's very well named. Their conversations, they're inspiring, but it's awesome. You've got some fantastic guests, and you do a great job pulling out, their message, their learnings, their ideas. So people should definitely check that out. Where else can people find out more about what you're doing and look into your services?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And so you can find me just at amyschuber.com and on social at Amy Schuber and inspiredconversations.net. So yeah, that's kind of where I hang out, around my name.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being on and sharing your journey with us, because there's definitely, like, there's a lot of lessons in there, and it's also, there's plenty of people out there who have these incredible stories of, death-defying feats, and a lot of us don't go through that, but we do go through, long drawn-out career struggles and taking leaps of faith, or being too scared to do that, and having that self-doubt and wishing for more self-confidence, and you're just really honest about all that, and I think it's stuff that I'm hard-pressed to imagine anyone not identifying with that.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing your story today.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me to have the chance to share. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Cool. Well, with that, I think people have got some good nuggets for them to move forward. So today's a new day.
Go out and do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
That's Amy Schuber. How awesome was that? So definitely follow her up, amyschuber.com, inspireconversations.net, at Amy Schuber, at, like every social media site there is. She's great. And she just gets some incredible guests on her show. She's closing in on 400 episodes. She might even be past it by the time this comes out. So there's a ton that you can get out of what Amy's putting out there. And I really appreciate her openness today, talking about her journey, because I think it's one that so many of us really, really relate to. And that's important, because if you're going to take a lesson away, it's really helpful to start from a place where you can be like, yeah, that's my life. I get it. I get why this matters. And if nothing else, I know I keep saying it and I keep coming back to it, but that quote from that Hopi poem, that you are the one you've been waiting for. It's not quite the quote from the poem. It's an interpretation of it, make it more personal, but you are the one you've been waiting for. Take that in, think about that, reflect on it, and ask yourself, are you feeling that way about you? Are you feeling that kind of confidence and power in yourself? If you're not, you need to. So I'm really appreciative for Amy being on the show today and sharing all that inspiration. And you can, of course, get even more inspiration on this whole Better You theme from Do A Day. So go to doadaybook.com, pick up the book, whether it's in audio form or the ebook or the print book, whatever way you want to consume it. Get the message if you haven't yet, and take it into your life, because there is a better path in front of you if you're willing to wake up and do it. I'm Brian Falchuk. I really appreciate you joining me again today, and I hope that you have an incredible day, an incredible life. And I'm not going to leave you with a quote about Do A Day. I'm going to go right back to Amy's quote because it's awesome. You are the one you've been waiting for. Thanks, everyone.